Bro got cheated on, beaten up, framed, bullied out of his own school, and was literally standing on a rooftop ready to end it all. And somehow this is still a love story. So let's start from the beginning. A phone screen fills the frame. Miyuki sends a message to Iji apologizing that she can't make it because of club activities. Iji types back something warm and encouraging, telling her not to worry and wishing her luck at practice. Then the camera pulls back and we see his face. He's sitting alone, staring at nothing, and the gap between what he just typed and what he actually feels is written all over him. He's gutted, because today was supposed to be their first real date as a couple. It was his birthday. The memory comes back to him in fragments. Christmas. Last year, the moment he finally told Miyuki how he felt. She became his girlfriend. Eiji thinks of her almost like an idol, someone so far above him that he still can't fully believe he gets to be with her. He's convinced that without their childhood history, he never would have worked up the nerve to even try. They've been together 6 months now, and in that time, he still hasn't kissed her. Not once. He put everything into today, planned it down to the last detail, and she canceled. He's standing in the middle of the city, surrounded by people moving in every direction, and he feels completely alone. He looks up and realizes where he is right in front of the movie theater, the exact place he was supposed to bring her. He lets himself drift into a daydream for a moment, imagining what it might have felt like to walk in there with her. Then the fantasy dissolves and he snaps back to the sidewalk, wondering why he's torturing himself like this in public, and then he freezes. He looks around and takes in the surroundings, and the weight of it lands on him all at once. He's in the Love Hotel district. He turns and starts to walk away and runs directly into Miyuki. Standing right there, holding onto the man, looking happy, he whispers her name. That's all he can get out. Miyuki looks at him, calls his name. She barely makes any sound. The air goes completely still, and then the man, Theo, demands to know what Eiji thinks he's doing there. Eiji, trembling, tries to reach for Miyuki, tries to say her name, and Miyuki recoils like he hurt her. Theo doesn't hesitate. He throws a punch that sends Eiji flying into the wall, grabs him by the collar, and demands to know what he was doing to his girl. Eiji, bleeding, tries to tell the truth, that Miyuki is the one who cheated, that he didn't do anything. Theo turns to Miyuki and tells her to speak up, then turns back to Eiji and, with a smile that has nothing kind in it, tells him that Miyuki only dated him out of obligation, because they were childhood friends, that she found him boring and disgusting. And then he goes further, mentions their intimacy, and just watches Eiji hollow out completely from the inside. He puts Miyuki on the spot, choose him or Eiji. Miyuki breaks down sobbing. She pleads with Theo not to throw her away. She says she wouldn't be able to go on without him. Theo pats her head like a pet, accepts her desperation like it's his due. Eiji stands there watching. He can't move, he can barely breathe. Theo smiles still on his face, tells Miyuki that's enough as long as she understands. Then he turns to her and asks quietly with poison in every syllable, "Who is this guy?" Miyuki looks at Eiji, and she says it. Eiji used to be her childhood friend. Now he's just a clingy stalker. An abusive boyfriend, a horrible person? Eiji stares at her. He can barely say her name. She delivers the final line with a coldness that feels rehearsed. She can't be with him anymore. And one more thing, don't speak to her at school. The world goes dark at the edges. Eiji understands, standing there in the street, that his ordinary life is already starting to fall apart. He goes home to Kichinono, his family's restaurant. His family greet him with warmth. He's back earlier than usual, they notice, but Eiji is somewhere else entirely, going through the motions, barely managing to decline his brother's offer for food. He retreats to his room and stays there. Days pass. He lies in bed. His mother Lumi leaves meals outside his door, and he can't bring himself to eat them. When he finally sleeps, the nightmare is always the same: Miyuki in Theo's arms, her voice dripping contempt, calling him disgusting, telling him he simply misunderstood their friendship, and it gets worse from there. Trapped inside some fragmented version of consciousness, he watches Theo tell Miyuki to forget about the creepy guy and focus entirely on him, and the sounds of their intimacy echo around Eiji like a punishment. He jolts awake gasping, tears already running, begging out loud for it to stop. He becomes terrified of sleep. The waking hours aren't much better. He moves through school like a ghost, ignored, invisible, his reflection in windows showing him someone he barely recognizes. When a classmate cheerfully asks about Amada-san, he manages to pull his mouth into something resembling a smile. It doesn't reach his eyes by a mile. In his memory, Miyaki calls out to him and asks, completely out of nowhere, if there's someone he likes. He barely knows how to answer. She mentions that he never really talks about romance, that even Miyuki doesn't bring it up around people, and then with a playful grin asks if she should just become his bride instead. Then she laughs and says she's kidding and teases him for taking it seriously. He's still trying to recover from that when he finds himself standing face to face with Miyuki. He goes still. She looks at him, soft-voiced, wondering why he looks so unsettled. Before anything else can happen, Lyra steps between them and turns on Eiji like a switch flipped. She calls him an abusive creep, tells him to stay away from Miyuki, warns him she won't let him get away with stalking her. Then she takes Miyuki by the arm and leads her away, firmly instructing her to properly ignore people like Eiji. He stands in the hallway alone, barely whispering a sound. That night he's lying face down on his bed, staring at his phone when a message comes through from an unknown account. Just 4 words, "Die, you disgusting person." More follow. His screen fills with it. Abusive scumbag, violent creep, violent jerk. Get out. The messages keep coming. Drop out. Leave. Stop existing here. He stares at all of it and whispers that he didn't do anything, then collapses onto the mattress, completely broken. He goes back to school because what else is he going to do? Head down, walking through the hallway like he's already invisible. He reaches his classroom door and tells himself just act like it's a normal day. He opens it and sits down. The atmosphere hits him like a physical weight. His classmates are talking around him, past him like he's furniture. Then somebody cuts through the noise with a sharp sound of disgust, and Eiji sits there trembling, completely isolated in the middle of a room full of people. Someone slams a hand on a desk, shouts for him to shut up, calls him a criminal, insists Miyuki would never lie. Others pile on, comparing him to the school's celebrated figures, reminding him that an upperclassman from the soccer club personally witnessed what he supposedly did. Eiji can't take it anymore. He just wants the noise to stop. He slumps over his desk completely done. At lunch, he's on a bench by himself, eating mechanically, eyes vacant. A notification says his club activity is cancelled. He goes to the club room anyway, holding on to some thin thread of hope that someone there might still be on his side. He calls out for the president. Nobody answers. What he doesn't know yet is that the cancellation was a lie deliberately designed to keep him out, and that the club members have already thrown away the manuscript he spent real time and effort on. He overhears them mocking it from the hallway. Mocking him, his hard work, pathetic. He walks around the corner and finds the trash can tipped over, pages scattered on the floor, his work in pieces in the garbage. He wanders until a thought surfaces. Teacher Ayase, the vice homeroom teacher. She once told him she'd always be on his side. He heads to the classroom and freezes at the door when he hears a classmate asking Ayase to check on Miyuki because she's been having a rough time lately. He watches Ayase respond with genuine concern while Miyuki performs the role of the struggling victim with a faint, barely visible smile pulling at the corner of her mouth. The promise echoes in his mind. Always be on his side. He goes to his locker. Opens it, notes fall out, die, and another threatening him against snitching. He closes the locker and walks out of the school building. From a distance, Miyuki and her group watch him leave. The silence behind him just makes it worse. He tells his mother the club was cancelled. She notices he looks exhausted and tells him to rest properly. He smiles and says he'll do his best. He keeps the truth completely sealed away because the logic goes like this. His older brother stepped up to run the restaurant when their father couldn't anymore, and their mother Lumi never let a single crack show in her expression, always smiling so Eiji wouldn't worry. They both absorbed their pain quietly so he could simply enjoy being a kid in school. He's not going to be the one who breaks that arrangement. He puts on the smile and says he'll do his best and goes to his room. Somewhere else in the city, a girl with long hair is sitting on her bed with the covers pulled around her, staring at the ceiling while the clock ticks. This is Miyuki, though until now we have seen Eiji's side of the story. Miyuki in her own side refers to herself as someone who can't sleep and can't stop asking herself how her life arrived at this exact point. She wishes she had been stronger. She wishes, when Eiji was being humiliated in front of her, that she had broken down and clung to him and begged him not to leave her. She almost cried watching it happen. She stopped herself, then told herself she doesn't have the right to cry. She thinks back to how it started with Condo-senpai. Her friends introduced her to him, they misread the situation she was in and thought this was what she needed. He was experienced, charming, the ace of the soccer team. She tried to keep her distance at first, she really did, but he was everything she couldn't find in Eiji, confident, practiced, smooth. He knew what to say and exactly when to say it. He looked at her and told her she was seriously attractive, and she felt it land differently than anything Eiji had ever managed to offer. She remembers the kiss. She remembers telling herself afterward that everything she should have given to Eiji had been taken away in that one moment. Kondo-senpai looked at her and told her that if a guy fails to make a move on someone as attractive as her, that's entirely his own fault. He told her she wasn't the one in the wrong, that Eiji failed as a man. She found a strange guilty pleasure in that framing. She let it hold her. She became dependent on it. And then came the night before Eiji's birthday. They were lying together, and she reminded Kondo-senpai that the next day was Eiji's birthday. He shrugged. Said if she was going to keep putting Eiji first, he'd find someone else to spend the time with. He played the victim, told her he was tired of chasing her, that they should end things for their own happiness. She panicked and begged him to wait. She chose to stay because she believed Eiji would forgive her. She counted on his nature. She knew he would accept her no matter what. And that certainty is what she leaned on when she made the choice that destroyed him. Now she sees 10 years of their history, his smile, everything they were supposed to be, and she wants to confess everything to everyone, and she can't, because she's too afraid of losing what she has. I want to say something here because this is the part of the manga that I actually think is done really well, even if it's uncomfortable to read. Miyuki is not written as a simple villain. She's a coward, absolutely, but the writing shows you exactly how someone becomes a coward like her. Kondo senpai didn't just steal her from Eiji. He systematically dismantled her sense of where the fault lay. He's been doing this to people since middle school. He's good at it, and the manga doesn't let Miyuki fully off the hook for it. She made choices, she used Eiji's kindness as a safety net. But it also shows the machinery behind those choices. That's more nuanced than most romance manga bothered to be, and I think it matters. Eiji comes back to school and the desk has been written on, die. Loser. Get out. The words are plastered on the surface like a public declaration. He walks the hallway while classmates whisper violent guy. Kondo senpai had to put him in his place. What a pathetic existence. Then he finds his own photograph on the blackboard, his home address printed beneath it, labeled as an abusive creep, with a demand in plain letters to get out of the school. His address is out there now, his family's restaurant, his home is no longer safe because of a lie. He screams. He demands to know why. He's shaking. Kondo senpai is standing nearby, that familiar smug twist on his face. He asks Eiji how it feels to be treated like a criminal. Then he answers the question Eiji didn't ask. He admits he did all of it because it was fun. Because watching Eiji lose his girlfriend and everything around him makes for an excellent show. He tells Eiji it was his own fault for thinking someone like him could ever have been with Miyuki. He tells him to just drop out. Eiji collapses to the floor. He ends up in the school infirmary. The nurse tells him she'll inform his homeroom teacher. He thanks her in a voice that sounds like it belongs to someone who has used up everything. He sits by the window and stares out at nothing, unable to find a single person he believes will actually help him. He thinks of his family, his parents, his brother, and realizes he can't even find the words to start that conversation. He knows that because Miyuki is seen as bright, capable, and universally liked, any teacher he approached would default to her version of events without a second thought. His phone is still flooded. The messages haven't stopped. Drop out. Creep, get out of the school. He's barely holding the device. Then a new message arrives, this one from the club president. He's no longer welcome in the club. The other members are scared of him. Eiji finally breaks. He's sobbing silently, tears running, screaming inside his own chest that he didn't do anything. He tries to reach out through his phone. He's not even entirely sure what he's trying to do, and gets a cold system notification informing him that the recipient cannot receive gifts. He's been cut off from everything. The tears just keep coming. Eventually, he collects himself enough to walk out of the infirmary. He apologizes to the nurse for the trouble. She tells him to take care of himself. He walks out alone again. He sits against a wall somewhere in the building, a shadow of who he was, and tells himself that he just has to get used to this, that if he waits long enough, his heart will go numb to it. The insults keep cycling through his head, creep die, scum the worst. He stares straight ahead with empty eyes and sinks further into the isolation. And then his thoughts drift somewhere darker. He wonders if jumping off the school rooftop might finally make it all stop. He goes up to the roof. He stands there beneath an open, empty-looking sky, his heart somewhere far below where his chest should be. He reaches his limit. He's at the absolute floor of his endurance. But someone else is already there. A girl standing in the wind, beautiful and clearly carrying something heavy of her own. He blinks. They look at each other. She asks who he is. He introduces himself awkwardly. Second year, was skipping class. Just wandered up here. He thinks to himself very clearly that there's absolutely no way he can tell her the real reason he came to the roof. She looks at him. Her name, it turns out, is Ichiju Ai, though he'll come to think of her as Mira. She placed first in the entrance exams. The moment she arrived at the school, she became its idol, kind and beautiful in a way that had boys confessing to her constantly. She looks at him with a puzzled expression and wonders why he's showing up now. He gives her a pained, forced smile and says she's probably heard the rumors. He asks if he can just hide out in this spot until the lunch break ends. She refuses. Flat out, this is her spot, she says, and he can disappear somewhere else. He asks if she's really sure, reminding her that she knows the rumors. She says she does. He's taken aback. Most people who know the rumors wouldn't share a hallway with him, let alone engage in an actual conversation. But Mira just says she doesn't take rumors seriously when she hasn't personally witnessed anything. She looks genuinely puzzled about why would you hurt someone based on a one-sided story you heard secondhand? She calls it what it is. A mob operating without information, running on emotion, destroying someone without ever finding out the truth. Eiji looks down and asks quietly, "Do you believe me then?" She says it isn't really about belief. Hurting someone based on biased and incomplete information is just too great a risk to take. She won't do it. He stands there speechless. He looks up at her, his eyes shimmering, and whispers, "Thank you." She looks confused. She didn't do anything, she says. Not really. He tells her it's fine if she doesn't understand why. He just needed to say it. Then the sky opens and it starts pouring. He tells her they should get inside before she gets soaked. She tells him to leave her alone, sharp, and almost desperate. He keeps pushing gently, and then something in her gives way, and she shouts at him. She told him he doesn't understand. Rain streaming down her face, she says, there's no need to worry about her getting wet or catching a cold, because there is no tomorrow for her. Iji goes pale. He tries to reach her. She screams. She says she wants to die, tells him to leave her alone, and there's a raw desperation in it that cuts right through him. He lurches forward and grabs her arm and shouts for her to stop. She fights against his grip, kicking, crying out, asking why he would go this far for someone he just met, pointing out that he's putting himself in danger. He shouts at her to shut up. He tells her, fiercely and without any calculation behind it, you don't need a reason to save someone. She stares at him wide-eyed. He shouts his proposal, skip school, come with him, just for today. She shouts back that he clearly doesn't understand how serious this is. He looks at her with a sad, crooked smile and tells her the truth. He came up here planning to die too. He never expected to end up stopping someone else from doing the same thing. She stares at him completely silent. Then something in her face changes. Through the tears, slowly, a small and real smile appears. She agrees. He looks at her, rain soaking both of them, and the relief between them is almost visible. They agree to go inside. He offers her his handkerchief. She hesitates, then takes it and thanks him. When their eyes meet, he gets flustered and tells her not to stare at him too much. She says she gets it, but she's already clutching the handkerchief, her clothes completely drenched, cheeks flushing, something unfamiliar fluttering somewhere inside her chest. Back inside the school, she asks what they do next. He apologizes, suddenly awkward. She accuses him of sexual harassment with a teasing expression. Then reminds him that since he was the one who proposed skipping school, he presumably had some kind of plan. He smiles sheepishly and admits, no, he was desperate. He made it up in the moment. She gives him the most deadpan look imaginable and says that this is really not the cool, delinquent energy she was expecting. Then she laughs. It's a small sound, but it's real. He thinks about what he'd heard from classmates who tried to confess to her. She shoots everyone down cold and immediate, no exceptions. But looking at her now, watching her actually smile, he's struck by how different she is from that reputation. He reaches into his bag and realizes he has rice balls. She's already offered him one from hers. They exchange. She takes a bite of the tuna mayo, and her eyes go wide. She looks at it like she's genuinely discovering something. He explains what it is, a staple convenience store, nothing fancy. She chews slowly and says she can't believe everyone around her has been eating something this good and she never knew. He smiles at her and says there's so much else out there like that. So many simple things. Then, with a gentleness that lands harder than he probably means it to, he tells her it would be such a waste to die without knowing all of them. She looks at him, her eyes are shimmering. He asks if she wants to come to his place. They navigate their way out of school. The front gate is locked, she points out. He tells her they're going anyway. She panics when he suggests climbing the gate and reminds him she's wearing a skirt. He immediately says he's joking and shows her a metal door near the front entrance, locked from outside, but easy to open from within. She asks how he knows about that. He grins and tells her an honor student like her wouldn't know about things like this. Then he takes her hand, and together they walk out. His face is scarlet. She asks why he's blushing. He tells her to just move. They walk hand in hand, and she questions quietly whether this is really okay, being this close to someone she only just met. She tries to rationalize it to herself. This kind of thing happens in movies and plays all the time, while AG walks beside her looking increasingly overwhelmed. Then she announces that this is her first time holding a boy's hand, and he needs to be mindful of that. He tells himself not to overthink it. They keep walking. A voice somewhere shouts in shock at the sight of them. They keep walking anyway, looking forward. Mira wonders why she's doing this. She barely knows him. And then a memory surfaces. Someone once told her he would protect her. She's heard that phrase from other boys before during confessions, and each time it triggers something that feels like fear and revulsion. But Iji didn't say that. He didn't perform protection at her. He just grabbed her arm and refused to let go. She looks at him walking beside her and thinks, he's such a good person that it actually worries her. And then she thinks if she's with him, she might be able to escape. A new figure enters the frame. Condo, he introduces himself to the reader the way a person introduces themselves when they've never once in their life considered the possibility that they might not be the most important person in any given room. Top 3 school in the prefecture. Father is a city councilman. Ace of the soccer team, scouted by prestigious universities, naturally popular since elementary school, has never been without a girlfriend since 3rd grade. He recounts it all with an ease that suggests he does this often in his own head. This is the part where I have to give the manga some credit for being genuinely uncomfortable in the right way. Kondo could have just been a standard boyfriend-stealing rival character, and the story would have still worked. But making him a sadist who has been doing this since middle school, methodically, deliberately, for fun, turns him into something more disturbing than a rival. He doesn't want Miyuki. He wants the wreckage. And the flashback to the previous couple he destroyed makes that completely clear. This isn't jealousy or desire, it's a hobby. And that makes everything that happened to Iji feel even more devastating, because Iji was never even the point. In 8th grade, Kondo remembers a classroom with its own class otaku and class idol, a childhood friend couple who were completely convinced they'd end up married. He found it disgusting. He turned on the charm. The class idol fell for it. She began badmouthing the otaku, called their relationship the greatest shame of her life. Kondo looked at her and privately thought, "Stupid woman playing tragic heroine." He recorded her insults and played them for the class otaku. He watched the boy collapse. He calls the memory a masterpiece. He's been chasing that feeling ever since. He dumped the girl the moment high school started. She'd already alienated all her old friends for him. He looked at her and said he hates loose women and has started to hate her. She spiraled into truancy, became a target of ridicule. Bad ending is how he describes it, with a grin, and now Miyuki is the next one in the sequence, smiling up at him without any idea what she's walking into. He grabs her arm and begins. He posts a fake claim on social media. Eiji has been abusing Miyuki. He watches the post spread and wears a slow, satisfied smile. Meanwhile, Miyuki notices Eiji hasn't returned since morning homeroom. The students who were mocking him earlier are now frantically trying to erase the graffiti they put on his desk, the reality of consequences catching up to them. Miyuki stands there trembling, insisting she didn't know anything about this. Kondo stands right beside her, looking triumphant while the lie he built starts collapsing in on itself. But Eiji is no longer inside the building. He's at the railing, looking out at the sky calm in a way that shouldn't be possible after everything that happened to him, and he's holding someone's hand. Mira's hand. They walk away together. Miyuki sees it and can barely process what she's looking at. She watches Eiji and Mira walk away, and something in her chest turns over violently. She demands to know who that girl is. She calls Mira names under her breath, consumed by a jealousy she absolutely has no right to be feeling. Homeroom that morning. Teacher Takayanagi calls attendance. He reaches Eiji's name. The desk is covered in graffiti. Die, loser, get lost. He looks at it, then asks the class where Eiji is. A student says he went to the nurse's office. Takayanagi sends the class to the gym and goes to check himself. The school nurse Mitsui meets him in the hallway, already distressed. She apologizes for not physically stopping him, for not realizing how serious his state was. He thanks her and says he'll speak with the vice principal. The meeting that follows is tense. Takayanagi stands before administration and takes partial responsibility, saying whatever failure happened in his class is also a failure of his management. The vice principal and grade chair Yui push back. Other teachers would have buried this to protect their own records. Takayanagi didn't. They acknowledge that. Then the news comes that Eiji got home safely. The image that plays with that announcement is Eiji and Mira walking hand in hand, which tells you everything you need to know about the school's assumptions. The priority is clear. Eiji cannot drop out. Arrangements for makeup classes are already being discussed. But the weight of the situation looms over everything. The longer this drags on, the harder it becomes. Takayanagi stands in front of the class with an expression cold enough to cut glass. He asks them if they know what property damage is. The room goes tight and airless. He explains Eiji's desk. He doesn't know yet who did it, but the students in front of him are radiating guilt from every direction. He goes through the logic slowly and deliberately. School desks are public property, funded by their parents' taxes, and damaging them is a crime. He anticipates the justification some of them are probably forming in their heads, that they just felt Eiji was a bad person, and he shuts it down before it can be said. Writing slander on another student's property is not acceptable. He brings up the reality of people being arrested for sending death threats to celebrities. The same principle applies here. This is not bullying. This is a crime. He wants every person in the room to understand that clearly. Meanwhile, Kondo is in his room texting Sayaka about meeting up after club, completely unbothered, when the door bursts open. Other students are coming in, frantic, telling him there's a problem. Takayanagi is treating the desk incident as a crime and has launched a formal investigation. Kondo's expression tightens for a moment. He assumed the teacher would quietly sweep it under the rug. He assumed wrong. He then waves it off with practiced ease, saying even if things escalate, his father will handle it. His underclassmen, the ones who actually scratched up the desk because they were loyal to him, stare at him in stunned silence. He turns a cold look on them and asks, with genuine contempt, when did he ever ask them to do something like that? He states flatly that they were the ones who spread the rumors. They were the ones who damaged school property. He just shared some private concerns with them, completely innocently. He instructs them to deny everything because there's no hard evidence. One of them starts to panic, says he can't bring himself to lie. Kondo's eyes sharpen. He tells them that if they don't follow his lead, they're finished. Then, with something like satisfaction, he notes internally that he now has 2 more people he owns. Eiji and Mira are sitting on a park bench, both of them breathing hard, having apparently run from something. Eiji asks if Mira is okay. Eiji looks at her and says just keeping up with him was genuinely impressive. She tells him, still catching her breath, that keeping up with a full-speed man is simply difficult. Someone in her past praised her as an ace, smart, athletic, the whole package. She refused to join any clubs. Back in the present, Eiji asks if she's ready to keep going. She accuses him of teasing her too much. He says he's probably just bad at explaining himself. She calls him a liar with a flat, unimpressed expression. They walk together and eventually arrive at the storefront of Kitchen Ono. Eiji opens the door and announces himself. He tells her he wasn't feeling great. He tells her his underclassmen also came with her, which formed a smug look on his mom's face. Eiji explains the family restaurant's history. His father, Leon, trained at a famous hotel, saved up money, fell in love with a woman named Lumi who worked at the front desk, and together they opened a Western-style restaurant. Leon is gone now. Eiji's older brother runs the kitchen, having graduated from culinary school. Lumi handles accounting and waitressing. His mom offers to let them eat in the back break room before the dinner rush takes over. Mira peeks into the room from the doorway, a little shy, and introduces herself formally. She thanks them for Eiji's help and apologizes for the unexpected visit. Mina and Eiji's brother just stare at each other. Wide-eyed, whatever they were expecting from Eiji today, it was not this. Mina apologizes for her reaction and immediately starts gushing about how cute Mira is. She tells them to eat whatever they like and to make themselves completely at home. Mira looks genuinely touched. Mira opens the menu and asks what he recommends. He points to the special lunch, the omelet rice. She lights up immediately. He goes to put in the order, then comes back and apologizes for how plain the place is. She looks around the room, his mother and brother's break room, overflowing with their personal things, magazines and small objects everywhere, and says she finds it refreshing. Her apartment and her family's house don't have anything like this. She looks around the space and tells him that a home reflects the color of the people inside it. Then she admits, softly, that she's a little jealous because her family used to have that warmth. Eiji doesn't respond right away. He just watches her with a look of quiet concern. Lena brings the food. Mira's eyes go wide. The omelet rice gets its own reverent moment. Tea is offered on the house afterward, and when Mira requests Darjeeling, Lena looks like she just found a kindred spirit. They immediately start a full conversation about tea and recommendations and local shops, while Eiji sits back and watches them both with something warm and almost disbelieving in his expression. Lena gets up to fetch the tea and tells them to enjoy the meal. Eiji gives Mira a gentle nod. She looks back at him, a little flustered, cheeks pink. They press their hands together and give thanks for the meal. They eat. Mira is happy in a way that seems almost new, like she's not quite sure how to hold it. Eiji watches her and can't get over the fact that just a few hours ago, they were both standing on a rooftop. She tries the tonjiru. Her expression softens. She says it feels comforting. Eiji tells her about his father, how he used to simmer the vegetables carefully to get that depth of flavor. He smiles thinking about it, genuinely proud. She wonders briefly if she was being insensitive bringing it up, but he says it's fine, because her appreciation for the food feels like she's praising the man who made the recipe, and that makes him happy. She holds the bowl and says the tanjiro says a lot about what kind of person his father must have been. He scratches his head with a modest smile, and then she asks, quietly, still looking at the food, does she really deserve to be alive? She tells him she had gathered her resolve on that rooftop. She had truly made up her mind. But she hadn't gone through with it yet, and then he showed up and he grabbed her arm and risked himself to pull her back, and something in her started to crack. Looking at the food in front of her now, she tells him with filling eyes that her resolve is starting to waver. Eiji says that he can't fully comprehend the pain she's been through, but simply because she was there, he himself was also saved. Eiji looks at her, soft, quiet, firm. He tells her, I want you to live, Ichiju-san. The walls finally come down. She cries, really cries, loudly and without any dignity, releasing everything she'd been sitting on while pretending to be the school idol, the perfect student, the girl who had it all together. He watches her and understands that this is the first time he's seeing who she actually is underneath all of that. Eiji's mom comes with the tea a few minutes later. She's composed herself, more or less. She looks up and thanks him with a real smile. He tells her the tea is flavored with wine, but the alcohol has been cooked off, so it's safe. She takes a sip and declares it her new top recommendation. She adds sugar and says she can feel it making her happy. Mina agrees enthusiastically, and they compare notes. It turns out they both love Darjeeling. The two of them disappear into their tea conversation while Eiji sits back and watches with quiet satisfaction. Lena says it feels like she finally has her own daughter and tells Mira to not just be Eiji's friend but also her friend. Mira blushes and agrees. When it's time to leave, Eiji offers to walk her to the station. She declines, gathering her things. She admits, blushing a little, that today was far too enjoyable, and that if he walks her to the station, she'll only end up feeling lonelier once she actually has to leave. He listens. She smiles at him softly and tells him it's okay. Then she says, "Meeting you gave me a reason to be here." He stares back at her. Something settles in him that hasn't been settled in a long time. She turns as she's heading out and asks, "Hey, senpai, are we friends now?" He says, "Of course." She closes her eyes, beaming. She tells him how happy that makes her, and asks him to keep looking after her. She walks through a residential street thinking that today might have been the happiest moment of her life. She wonders to herself if being friends is enough for now. A chauffeur arrives at her home. She thanks him calmly and gets in. Eiji closes his door. Silence, and then he completely falls apart. He collapses, sobbing, asking himself what is wrong with him. He was fine until a moment ago. His whole body is shaking. He sinks against the wall and asks himself what he's supposed to do when tomorrow comes. He pictures the classroom, the cold looks, the laughter, the isolation, and it feels like his social life has already been buried. But in the middle of that, the memory of Mira surfaces. Talking with her was the only time the pain fully went away. He's still sitting there when his phone buzzes. The notification isn't another wave of cruelty, it's a message from Amai Satoshi, checking in, explaining that his phone got broken during a trip and he's only just seen everything. The memory that surfaces is immediate and gentle. Eiji, Satoshi, and Miyuki, younger, happy together. None of this having happened yet. Eiji types back something brief, says he'll manage somehow. Eyes betraying how far from okay he actually is. Satoshi replies quickly, suggests they meet at their usual family restaurant. Eiji stares at the screen, slightly in shock. And then, for the first time in what feels like a very long time, cries with relief instead of despair. His classmates abandoned him. His clubmates abandoned him. Miyuki destroyed him, but Satoshi texted him like nothing has fundamentally changed between them, and that small ordinary thing breaks something open in a way that all the cruelty somehow couldn't. They meet at Kitchenano. Satoshi is already there, waves him over. They sit across from each other, and Satoshi gets right to it. He doesn't care about the rumors. Eiji matters. And then he slams his hands on the table and bows and apologizes genuinely, deeply, for not realizing how bad things had gotten. For not being there. He says he failed as a friend and asks to be forgiven. Eiji watches him with wide eyes. Satoshi admits he doesn't really use social media, which is why the posts spreading around about Eiji had completely bypassed him. He explains what he did find out. A club junior showed him the accusations, and he dismissed them immediately. He looks at Eiji and says he's never believed Eiji would lay a hand on anyone, and because Miyuki is involved, he finds the story even less plausible. He says it clearly these rumors are some kind of mistake. He tells Eiji that Takayanagi was genuinely worried about him. This confuses Eiji. Satoshi describes going to school and trying to ask people about Eiji, being met with the rumors, getting nowhere, then spotting Takayanagi in the hallway, and deciding to go straight to him. He admits, fiercely, that if he thought anyone was trying to cover things up, he would have punched them. He pleads with Takayanagi to tell him whatever he knows about what happened to Eiji. Takayanagi says he only became aware that morning and doesn't have answers yet, then asks Satoshi what he's heard, noting that the two of them are childhood friends. Satoshi decides to cooperate entirely. He tells Takayanagi everything he knows. Then in the memory, he breaks into emotion defending Eiji's character. He would never do something like this. Takayanagi listens quietly, thanks him, and asks him to pass something along to Eiji if possible. He promises to take full responsibility for resolving the situation. He tells Satoshi that while things look frightening, he can trust the adults and asks him to have a little faith. The memory ends. In the restaurant, Eiji is crying his eyes out. Neither of them is saying anything. They just sit there across from each other, faces wet, the weight of the past few days sitting between them like something physical. That same evening, Miyuki is walking fast through a quiet street, breathing in short bursts, telling herself she has to apologize. She arrives in front of Kitchenano, stares at the door. Tears are already coming. She tells herself she absolutely has to apologize to Eiji. Memories surface, her cooking, his laugh. The two of them in some earlier version of themselves, smiling in a way that feels like it belonged to a different world. She tells herself she has to take back the future she destroyed. She gathers herself, steps toward the door, and through it she sees Eiji sitting with Mira, talking, both of them at ease in a way she can't process. She freezes. She stares at Mira, the school idol, warm and gentle, and looking at Eiji with an expression Miyuki recognizes with a cold clarity. That is the face of someone who has fallen for him. She stands outside, hidden, mind racing, panicking. She knows who Mira is. She knows what she represents, a girl from a prestigious family, academically dominant, athletic, widely considered perfect, and famous specifically for rejecting every single person who has ever confessed to her. Mira hates men, supposedly. Mira doesn't do this, but here she is doing exactly this. Miyuki is hiding behind a wall when she's found out. A voice addresses her Miyuki-san, wondering why she's hiding there. She snaps to attention, eyes wide, panicking about whether this person knows, whether Eiji told them. She ends up at the door. Someone greets her and asks what she needs. And then Lumi appears. Lumi bows slightly and apologizes, as a parent, for interfering in young relationships. But she tells Miyuki if she listens to her own heart, she'll understand what she needs to do. Miyuki asks what she means, and Lumi tells her she noticed the cheating long before Eiji did. She'd been watching Miyuki for years. There was a gathering at a shopping district. They were having tea, and Lumi saw Miyuki holding hands with a man who was not her son. She watched it happen. She says it without anger. She says it with the quiet exhaustion of someone who has known a painful truth for a long time and has been waiting for the appropriate moment to say it aloud. She talks about young love, how easily people hurt each other, how easily people grow apart, and says she once assumed Eiji's silence meant they had ended things mutually. She thought maybe he found it hard to express his feelings, and then she understood. She looked at Miyuki and understood that this was a betrayal. Miyuki tries to speak, starts a sentence about how things aren't what they look like. Lumi stops her with a quiet finality. She has no obligation to listen to excuses. She says, and she already hates her enough. The word hate lands differently in Japanese than in English, with a specific weight, and Miyuki trembles at it. Barely manages to say sorry. Lumi says she doesn't need to hear it. They've known each other for over 10 years, which is why she'll give Miyuki one last piece of advice. Love is free, but no one has the right to trample on genuine affection. It isn't illegal, but it is a sin heavier than most crimes. Miyuki begs to see Eiji. Lumi says no. Simply that, no. Then she tells Miyuki that whether forgiveness comes is ultimately Eiji's decision, not hers, but she personally cannot stand the sight of her. And she asks her to stay away entirely. She delivers her verdict with the certainty of someone who has made peace with it. You're not worthy of my son. Miyuki stands there completely frozen as memories flood in, meals shared in this kitchen, Lumi's welcoming smile, the family warmth she used to be part of. The closed sign swings back and forth. Lumi says goodbye and goes inside. Miyuki walks away alone, crying without restraint, understanding that what she broke cannot be put back together. She gets home. Her mother is in the kitchen, bright and cheerful, teasing her about how beloved she and Eiji are, mentioning Eiji's health, asking how he's doing. Miyuki stands still and says nothing useful. Her mother, beaming, recalls that Miyuki used to say she wanted to be Eiji's bride when she was small. Miyuki's expression goes hollow. She manages a quiet. Yeah, she tells her mother not to remind her of embarrassing things. She says she has a test to study for her mother, wishes her luck. She closes her bedroom door and folds onto her bed and sobs into the mattress, crushed by the realization that she didn't just betray Eiji. She betrayed her own mother's idea of who she was. She knows she was the one who cheated, and then she participated in destroying him on top of that. She concludes that there's no path to forgiveness. There's no version of this that ends with her being okay. She opens her desk drawer, finds a photograph from the entrance ceremony, the two of them in that earlier, untouched version of their lives. She holds it against her chest and cries until there's nothing left. Then she picks up her phone and messages Condo-senpai, asking to meet, and she tells herself, staring at the screen through tears, that she has no choice now but to become a completely despicable person. The next morning, Eiji says goodbye to his family and steps outside. He's not okay. His stomach is twisted with dread, the kind that starts before you're even conscious of what you're dreading. Then a bright good morning senpai welcomes him outside the door. Myra is standing at his door with a radiant smile. Apparently having woken up early, specifically to walk to school with him, he stares at her, then closes the door in her face. She stares at the closed door and announces loudly that she woke up early for this. His brother tells him to get out there. Mina gives him a gentle push. He opens the door again. Mira greets his mother warmly, and Mina responds with equal enthusiasm, calling her Achon like they've been friends for years. While Eiji watches this happen with the expression of a man who has lost control of his own front door. Then the dinner menu comes up, oyster fry, seasonal, popular, served with plenty of tartar sauce. Mira lights up and declares her love for oyster fry, then immediately feels guilty about being treated again. She promises to pay next time. Mina waves it off and suggests takeout as an option if that's easier. Mira looks at her like she's an actual miracle of a human being. Mina pushes Eiji out the door. Mira thanks her warmly and they head off together. They walk side by side and she asks if he eats fried oysters often. He answers briefly. She launches into a detailed and enthusiastic breakdown of her preferred sauces: Worcestershire, lemon, ponzu, chili, with the energy of someone who has been quietly thinking about food more than she lets on. He walks next to her and realizes the fear is less. Having her beside him has actually reduced the dread in his chest by a measurable amount. Then they get close to the school and the whispers start. People staring, murmuring, baffled that the most beautiful girl in school is walking next to the guy all the rumors are about. Some speculate she's being coerced. Eiji's expression tightens. He asks if she's okay, quietly. He's worried that being associated with him will make her a target too. She looks back at him with a smile that says she's already thought about this. She tells him that there's no way that would happen, and she'll be honest. It feels strange to say about herself, but she's quite popular. He admits that's true. He's never actually heard anyone say anything bad about her. She gives a small smug expression. He thinks about her reputation for rejections. Swift, no hard feelings, universally respected. The flashback shows her politely turning down a confession and somehow leaving the person feeling understood rather than humiliated. She just does it right somehow. She hooks her arm through his and tells him that walking beside her will act as a buffer. People will talk, but they'll be talking about her connection to him rather than piling on with the abuse, and that new gossip should drown out the old cruelty. He says he doesn't want her reputation to drop because of him. She looks at him softly and says he's being too considerate. Then she says it directly. She doesn't need a reputation that could be damaged simply by walking to school with someone she cares about, and she wants nothing to do with anyone who would direct cruelty at him without even knowing him. He's overwhelmed. His eyes get wet. She notices and tells him it's too early for that. When everything is finally resolved, they can cry together. He thinks about Satoshi, who gave him the resolve to come back. He thinks about Mira, who gave him something to fight for. And standing at the school gates, he realizes with quiet shock that after everything, he still feels like he can believe in people. She asks if she can walk home with him again today. He says, sure, is that okay? She snaps back that she's the one who wants to walk home together, actually. Morning, shoe lockers. Someone says good morning to him in a normal voice, like he's a normal person, and Eiji startles like he can't quite remember what that sounds like. A teacher, Iwi-sensei, tells him to go see Takayanagi-sensei in the staff room first, then adds, Takayanagi has been worried since yesterday. Eiji thanks her quietly and heads off. He walks the hallway, dreading the staff room. He knows that being seen going in there will draw attention. He knows some teachers might still hold suspicions about him. He reaches the staff room and finds Takayanagi-sensei waiting outside it, leaning against the wall. The teacher notes that given T's current situation, walking into the staff room alone would be pretty daunting. He's not wrong. He leads them to a meeting room instead, explaining that the guidance office always ends up putting teachers in a position of authority over students, and he wants to talk to Eiji on equal footing. They sit side by side at the table, not across from each other. Someone tells Eiji that before he explains anything, there's something that needs to be said first. Then Takayanagi bows, a formal deep apology for not noticing Eiji's state, for letting him endure this alone, for bearing some responsibility in allowing it to continue. Eiji stares at him, stunned. He hurriedly asks him to raise his head. He didn't tell anyone. He says he didn't give anyone the chance to notice. Takayanagi says quietly that Eiji's ability to pick up on these things is truly remarkable. He thanks him, and then he gently says, tell me when you're ready. It can be little by little. Take your time. Eiji sits very still, wide-eyed, absorbing the fact that someone is sitting here and asking for his account of what happened, with patience, without suspicion. The weight of the past weeks presses in on him again. The faces of classmates twisted with contempt. Theo's grin, Miyuki's voice, the nightmares, the graffiti, the trash can with his manuscript in it. He remembers being told he was scum, being told to die, being told no one would ever believe him. He flinches with the memory of all of it. Takayanagi notices, reads the silence, and apologizes for pushing. He says there's no need to force it today. Eiji whispers sorry. He's told immediately that there's nothing to apologize for. Takayanagi offers to get him a drink. Cola is fine, even though it's technically not allowed. Today is an exception. First period has already started. The vice principal, a history teacher, is covering the class. Eiji agrees to wait. Takayanagi comes back with the drink and looks at Eiji steadily and says, right now supporting Eiji is the school's top priority. He is the one who should be suffering most in this situation. Eiji looks up at him with a face full of shock and says quietly, thank you. His eyes fill. Takayanagi sets the can on the table and sits beside him and holds up 2 fingers. 2 reasons, he says. Why he believes Eiji the first. He's watched enough of these social situations to see the pattern. Students get swept up in group panic and manufactured outrage. They convince themselves they're acting for justice while they destroy someone. Online, you see it constantly: mob mentality. People losing everything because someone decided they were the villain of the week. The classmates piling on Eiji are doing the same thing. They don't even realize what they're becoming in the process. The second reason, he says, putting his tea down, looking at Eiji directly, is simpler. He looks at Eiji. And Eiji doesn't look like someone who would use violence. He also doesn't look like someone who deserves the kind of underhanded cruelty that's being directed at him. He smiles slightly, finishing, "It's a teacher's intuition." Eiji is quiet for a long moment, then he tells Takayanagi there's something he needs to consult him about. He starts with Miyuki. Takayanagi confirms he's aware of the relationship. Eiji recounts August 31st, his birthday, the canceled date, walking through the city alone, seeing Miyuki in the shopping district with Condo senpai. He reached out and grabbed her arm to confront her. He didn't think he was being rough. She acted like it hurt. Then Condo senpai hit him hard and started shouting that he was a violent stalker. Takayanagi's expression sharpens. This is more serious than simple cheating. This involved a physical incident, a direct, deliberate framing. He asks quietly about Miyuki's choice. Eiji, eyes shadowed, confirms she chose Condo. Takayanagi places a hand on Eiji's shoulder. He thanks him for trusting him with it, and then his expression goes somewhere more serious, and he says the name, Kondo Seiji. He knows Kondo's type on the surface, soccer ace, decent grades, clean image, friendly to teachers, but Takayanagi knows the faculty's actual opinion of him. His reputation behind closed doors is poor. Relationship trouble follows him everywhere. The difficulty is that Kondo is slippery, without physical evidence of the punch, without a hospital visit. He'll deny everything and twist the narrative. Takayanagi is going to need every piece of information he can gather to find the contradictions in Kondo's story. He tells Eiji with a look that carries real weight behind it. From here, the adults take over. His job right now is to stop carrying this alone. He looks at the classroom where the malice lives. He decides forcing Eiji back in there now would only cause lasting damage. The priority is protecting Eiji's ability to continue his school life without permanent scars. The vice principal confirms in an administrative meeting that allowing Eiji to drop out is not an option. Makeup classes and assignments will be arranged. The principal makes the necessary adjustments. But the longer this situation continues, the harder Eiji's position becomes. That reality is sitting in the room with everyone. Eiji apologizes to Takayanagi for causing trouble. Takayanagi reacts with genuine force. He tells Eiji that he could never be a burden. He places his hand on Eiji's shoulder and says, this situation is a problem for him as a teacher, for the entire school, and Eiji is not causing any trouble at all. He tells him he takes on too much and is far too kind for his own good. Eiji looks up at him, moved. Mira appears in the memory, reminding him that his kindness is a virtue, and virtues make people want to protect you. He asks if it's really okay to let himself rely on people. The professor confirms it is. He talks about pure feelings when they get trampled on the way his did. Can break even adults completely apart. He names the people around him, his close friend May, his own family. The nurse and the other teachers are also worried about him. When the pain is too much, he tells him to reach for them. Takayanagi, with somewhat of a pleading voice, tells Eiji when it becomes too much, put himself first. Stop carrying it alone. Eiji agrees, tears quiet on his face. He finally lets himself believe it. He's sent to the nurse's office to rest. Mitsui-sensei greets him with a gentle expression and tells him things must have been very rough for him. He says it's reassuring to know the teachers are looking out for him. She tells him not to push himself. His body might be fine, but his heart is exhausted. She reminds him that Takayanagi is working hardest on his behalf. Then, lightening it slightly, she teases him about spending 7 hours in the nurse's office the previous day. He agrees that it was boring. He says if he doesn't do something, the weight of all the negative emotions will crush him. She offers him some books from the library as a distraction. He asks if that's really allowed. She gives him a conspiratorial wink and says they're secret. He reads. She comes to check on him and finds he's already finished one. She offers tea. She doesn't keep coffee because she can't drink it green tea if that's all right. He accepts, takes a sip, closes his eyes. Something in him settles. He asks her, a little abruptly, why she became a teacher. She looks mildly surprised but decides to be honest with him since it's just the two of them. She admits getting the teaching license was a safety net. She didn't have anything she particularly wanted to do. She smiles slightly at how candid that sounds coming from an educator. She didn't go into teaching right after college. She worked at a regular company first, then transferred to the school 5 years ago. She had wanted to pursue something else back in college, but she gave up on it. She was scared. He asks, scared of what? She reflects. A single word from a teacher can alter the course of a student's entire life. The weight of that responsibility eventually overwhelmed her, and she ran from it. She admits she's still scared, because Eiji is at the most critical stage of his life, and she feels the gravity of that every time she looks at him. She asks if he'd be willing to keep listening, while she tells him a little more about herself. He says yes. She describes her previous job, an old-school company, oppressive, isolating. She reached her physical and mental limits and kept forcing herself forward, backing herself further into a corner until there was no one left she could reach out to. And then she collapsed from overwork and woke up in a hospital to find her mother sitting beside her, weeping. Her mother lived in another city. They barely talked. There was no way her mother should have even known she was there, but she'd come. She was apologizing over and over for not noticing sooner. She was asking why she hadn't come to her for help. She said it would have been a lifelong regret if something had happened. Eiji listens, and it hits him, cold and sudden. What would have happened if Satoshi, Mira, and Takayanagi hadn't noticed him when they did? He would have become this story. He was already becoming it. He thinks about sitting through every class in silence, absorbing every insult, trying to endure it until his heart went numb. He was already on the path to the breaking point. Mitsui looks at him. There's a quiet understanding between them that doesn't need to be said out loud. 4 hours earlier, the classroom door slides open and Mira steps inside with her usual composed expression. The class looks up. Someone approaches her with concern. She heard Mira wasn't feeling well yesterday. Myra smoothly says she was just a little overheated, needed some rest. The classmate tells her not to push herself. Mara smiles back warmly and internally acknowledges that this smile is a mask. She's been wearing it for years, keeping everyone at arm's length while appearing completely available and warm. She's kept herself isolated specifically by being the person everyone likes without actually letting anyone in. She's been cornering herself without realizing it. She thinks about how at school she has to perform the role of Aichiju, the school idol meeting every expectation, never letting anyone see the cracks. She calls herself pathetic for it, for the constant gap between the public smile and what's actually happening inside her. No one at this school ever looked at who she actually was, not even her parents. And then she met Eiji. In one day he became the person who saw her without the performance, who let her be her most embarrassing self, who found parts of her personality she didn't know existed. She walks with him and the pain fades. She laughs genuinely, sometimes, which is something she wasn't sure she still knew how to do. She thinks about how much she wants to spend time with the people who matter to her. Then she reminds herself not to be selfish. She doesn't want him to think she's only walking with him to shield him from the school's cruelty. She knows he's the one who actually protected her heart. A classmate approaches her and asks about the upperclassman she was seen walking to school with, the one everyone has been talking about. Mira asks calmly if they mean Ono-senpai. The classmate blinks. Myra confirms she's the one who went to his house, and she's the one who walked to school with him. The room erupts. They can't believe she's openly admitting this. Someone brings up the rumors, the violent past, the abuse accusations. A male classmate pushes further, demanding to know why someone like him would be okay with someone like her. She interrupts him, asks him by name. Mahiro-kan, whether he has ever actually spoken to Eiji directly. He hesitates. She follows up. Has he personally witnessed any of what the rumors described? He has to admit he hasn't. She looks at him with a bright, completely certain expression and says, Eiji is not the person those rumors make him out to be? As Eiji's friend, he knows the truth and owes him a debt, and he challenges anyone to say otherwise. Myra's expression sharpens, and she says clearly that she truly hates people who pile on someone simply because the group has decided to dislike them, without knowing them at all. The male classmate looks down and apologizes. She softens and apologizes in return for being too harsh. She tells another classmate who apologizes that it's fine, though she's sorry for involving them in her little scheme. Because even if the defamation is eventually disproven, reputations don't automatically clean themselves once they've been damaged. She knows this. She's thinking about it. She's thinking about how to overwrite the cruelty with something that drowns it out. Positive attention, new gossip, anything that pushes the malicious narrative out of the first thing people think when they hear his name. She's going to do whatever it takes. The scene shifts to a soccer field. Morning practice. The sadistic guy looks exhausted and annoyed about being there at all for a practice match. He screams at his teammate for falling for a basic feint, and leaving space calls him a dumbass, says they can't win like this. Theo looks on with smug satisfaction, declaring himself the king of the team. He believes he's too important to waste energy on defense, and operates under what he calls an unspoken arrangement with the coach to focus entirely on his artistry and attack. He glides past a teammate with the ball and shifts his gaze toward a name in his head, Aigiano. The word pathetic forms on his face. He thinks about last night, Miyuki at home alone, parents out, clinging to him, asking him to make her forget everything. She said he was all she had and there was no going back. He acknowledged this with a cool, collected expression while internally running the calculation. Just like Aigiano, he thinks she's now on the slide downward. He tells her everything is okay, that they're bound by fate, puts on the voice of a devoted partner. She whispers thank you, holding on to him. His phone screen, visible for just a moment, is full of affectionate messages from other girls. Once Aigiano is completely broken, he'll dump Miyuki and move on. He looks at her tear-filled eyes and thinks, with genuine pleasure, that seeing a pretty face consumed by despair is the absolute best feeling. He stands on the field with the ball at his feet. He can't wait for the moment those two finally break. Then someone runs into the locker room waving a phone, saying the information is already spreading. Kondo-senpai looks up. The screen shows a photo of Eiji and Mira walking side by side, both of them smiling. He stares at it. He processes it slowly. Then to the gossip of the students around him dismissing Eiji as a violent nobody, Kondo-senpai asks very quietly if that girl is really Aichi-ju. In his memories, he approaches her directly, full confidence. He introduces himself as a third year and asks if she'd like to get coffee on the way home sometime. He adds that he found her attractive since the entrance ceremony and has been wanting to speak with her. She smiles politely and tells him that going somewhere with someone she doesn't really know is, honestly, a little scary for her. He stands there after she walks away. His mind is working fast. He just got turned down so that she could spend time with someone like Eijiano. He starts to fume. The wounded pride turns ugly. His face contorts into something that has dropped all the charm completely, and then it twists into something worse. A grin that has decided this isn't over. He clenches his fist. He's going to make everyone understand the difference in their standing. The king of the school does not get turned down. Thank you for watching this video and make sure to like and subscribe. If you have any manga recommendations to recap next time, leave it in the comment section below.